on the record.
See, now that works more than anything. Like whistling, clapping, whatever. The new thing is like we're about to go live and then it's silence. That probably works better than anything. What I say might be online. All right. So, good morning.
Thank you.
Today we're looking at next week's text. As Carolyn was saying, we've got quite the story going on. Basically, I think this is the whole chapter 9 of John is the gospel text.
Wow.
And there's actually there's ways to break it up, to shorten it. And I toyed with that for a moment, but I thought, you gotta read the whole thing because it's too good. The epistle and the Old Testament reading definitely taken to support the theme of blindness is going to be obviously the overarching kind of theme, because we're dealing with this man born blind. So we're just going to read through this and we'll talk about it. So John chapter 9 begins with, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, it is not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Having said these things, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva. He anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said to him, go, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. All right, so first off, we've got a man born blind, right? Okay. So, this is what Jesus saw, right? Man born blind. What did the disciples see? They saw the similar thing, same thing. But what was so? Jesus sees a man born blind. The disciples, what is their reaction?
What kind of sin?
Who sinned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not just what kind of sin, but who did it?
Who sinned? Yeah.
Because clearly, if this guy was born blind, this is an affliction from God. God has cursed him in some way. This is a response to sin, clearly. And which is like, okay, fine, that was their understanding. But I mean, what does it say about them that when they see this guy born blind, their first thought is, who sinned?
Law.
No. All these things, yeah, judgment. Sure, law. I mean, oh, yeah, I can, yeah. I envisioned I was going to have a lot to write. So I was trying to, well, I can see it fine. It's right here. Lack of compassion. I mean, Jesus sees this man, he's born blind. They see a man born blind, or, they see him, but their mind immediately goes to, like, what's the cause of this? Who did it? Who, and really it's not even, it's who. There's somebody who needs to be held accountable for this. Whether they, what are they going to do about it, honestly? But there's no, I mean, it's just like, let's get to the bottom of this. Let's figure out who did this. Was it parents? Was it him? And of course, Jesus says, it was neither, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. So we get this side kind of thing here, where it's not going to be the main point of the whole text, but we do get this this picture of that these afflictions can be seen in terms of opportunities. I know I'm writing small. Or God's work, grace. So they're looking at it in terms of sin. He's looking at it in terms of this is so that God's works can be shown through him, which obviously Jesus is going to show by working through him.
It's not really that different of a perspective, because the root of both inquiries is God. God's done this to this man. So the disciples take the, I used to think that way. Like, what did I do wrong? Why am I being punished? Why is this bad happening? But in the end, they're somewhat right? Because it is God's work.
Right.
But they didn't see it in the other perspective.
Yeah.
So they're both really not off on the wrong track, the disciples. They're just looking at it in a different perspective because they don't understand that God would, you know what I mean? It doesn't click right away.
Right.
It didn't for me.
Yeah. Well,
at
and
all.
It doesn't for a lot of people. And it's not necessarily, well, when we see people, where do we usually go? Just when you see somebody on the street and they're, however they look or whatever, what do we start making immediately about them?
We just, as humans, we look for patterns.
Judgments. Oh, yeah.
Just survival. That's just the way our
Yeah.
brains function.
And especially when you have kind of a, and this is not as in vogue these days, but you have kind of a conception of what normal things are, what normal is, in general. Now this is always in flux now, and what is normal. But, and we don't even see, so we make very quick judgments based on what we see and not necessarily, looking deeper like, okay, well, if we see something, we make a quick judgment. We go off of that and not what's behind that. And this, probably the easiest way, probably the simplest example I could use, what I try to do is like, well, maybe. I go in to get my daily, twice daily, 3 times daily, however many times, my lovely Big coffee. And the barista behind the counter is not as engaging, is maybe just very brisk and like, and not very, just not nice. Well, not mean, but just like clearly not giving the best customer service. And, now I can say, well, this is a mean person. This is a person who doesn't want to be here. And she or he is just, and that's going to affect me. Or I can look at it like, I have no idea what their day has been like. I have no idea what they're going through. They might have a lot of stuff going on. It might not even have to do with work. Maybe they brought stuff from home. Who knows? But, I can make that call to say, like, am I going to make a snap judgment based on what I see? Or can I look at the whole situation kind of like this, like, oh, no, I don't care what's going on, like, initially, as far as what it concerns me. But, hey, this is an opportunity for God's work, grace. Maybe I can look at this person with grace and the gospel and just like, oh, be nicer to them. Ask them what's going on. Hey, is there anything I can do? Like, how are you doing? Really, how are you doing? Even just to talk might be something that they need. So right from the get-go, there's a lot of stuff already. First paragraph. But yeah, we see that Jesus sees the situation. The disciples make a judgment based on it. Okay, and they're somewhere in the realm, but they're looking at it in the wrong perspective. They're very much locked in this kind of area. And Jesus is like,
That's right.
what's that?
It's what they've always known.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
But that doesn't excuse them though.
No, it doesn't.
Just like there's a lot of stuff we've always known. That doesn't excuse us.
I know I walk around in a cloud.
we all do. We all have our clouds. So that's like, so this is the first, we'll call this Act 1. All right.
I've always
Oh,
thought of
I forgot about that. Yes.
that the opportunities were that Jesus was going to heal him, but I wonder if the opportunities also had to do with the blindness that he experienced, how his parents, interacted. Were there lots of opportunities both for him, his parents, and other people to show grace?
Absolutely, sure. And we'll see that there were some opportunities. Ultimately, at the end of the pericope here, is going to be, the blindness that we're dealing with. Yes, we're talking about spirit or physical blindness. Is really a commentary on the spiritual blindness of not seeing Jesus and all that. So we're going to get to that. So we're going to see even a bigger work of that. So then I forgot the aspect of how Jesus heals him, where he spits on the ground, makes some mud with saliva, and anointed his eyes with mud, which is a fun little thing. Did Jesus have to do that to heal him?
Why should we analyze his method? He knew what he was doing.
Oh no, well, absolutely. Well, a lot of people do analyze the method, and because, and the thing is he does something different, which is it's always kind of like, ooh, when something different happens in Scripture, it's always cause for like, wait a second, why is he doing it like that? And in this case, there are many times where we can look at something and say, well, sometimes we can read a little bit too much into things and really wonder and like go down a rabbit hole of like, why does he make mud? Given the whole, and when we get to the end of the text, given the whole thrust of it, I mean, one suggestion that I would make with this is the fun thing is this man is born blind, so Jesus heals him by obscuring his vision even more. Like he's blind, and now I'm shoving mud in your eyes. Okay. And because what we're going to go through is the people who should know better and who should see, and even tying in with the Old Testament lesson, is just this idea of being born blind versus the people who have chosen to be blind.
What about because he was made from the clay of the earth, that he had to use the clay of the earth of creation because he was born that way too?
Could have been.
Why not?
I mean,
We're making...
it could be. We know that he doesn't need to do this. Some people make some hay with this, like, oh, that's a very, ancient sort of shaman-esque pagan sort of way to for a healer to do things, to whatever. So Jesus is just aping the conventions of the time. It's like,
or it's another way for him to muddy the waters. He does that with parables. Yes. Play on words.
John would be
Harvard
proud.
Sticker would be proud of you, Paul. Did you hear that, Paul?
Pardon?
Harvard Sticker would be proud of you.
Yep. Yes. Let's raise a glass to the continuing legacy of really bad puns. So yeah, I wouldn't get too hung up on it, but it's interesting, and we might circle back to it when we get towards the end. We might not. All right, so he went and washed and came back seeing. Then Act 2, we get the neighbors. All right, the neighbors. So we have Act 2. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." And he kept saying, "I am the man." So they said to him, "Then how were your eyes open?" He answered, "The man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I don't know." All right.
He wouldn't know what he looks like. No, I already had moved it.
Valid. Well, yeah, valid.
Yeah, he had to go straight to the pool. Jesus didn't go to the pool with him.
Right. So the neighbors.
Right. You didn't know what he looked like.
All right. And the fun thing is that the neighbors who.
Pretty straightforward.
The issue I have with the neighbors is like, how does he look so different? Like, okay, they've seen him, and they're like, okay, there's the blind beggar guy. They've seen him many times. They're neighbors. Okay, he goes, now he can see, and now all of a sudden they're like, oh, is this the same guy? Now I get with like, well, but the guy we know is blind.
He behaved differently.
Well, he behaved differently,
Maybe
true, but
he
I mean,
had the cloudy eyes when sometimes people are blind. Their eyes are cloudy.
Could be.
And maybe they never saw the color of his eyes.
Could be. Very well, could be. I mean,
A lot of people look alike. We're Chris talk in a specific place.
We could.
Sometimes you see
Although
the
I look
deformity
like,
and
if
you know, I
don't see
look
the
just like all my other fourth cousins. You can mix us up easy.
True. But even in tight knit communities, though, they know everybody,
Well, I understand
and
that,
so
but-
there's a counterbalance to that too. You've got a lot of people do look alike, and then there's within the communities, everybody knows everybody,
Right.
and everybody's all up in everybody's business. So
Once they know them, they know their looks change anyway.
sure. So there's definitely something to it. But I mean, they have seen him, but now they're not sure. There's confusion because okay, something's changed.
Because he's
So
not lying.
they see, but not sure. They're very confused. Okay, he insists that he's the guy. Okay, how did this happen? And he says, okay, Jesus, this man called Jesus. So the man says, so Jesus is a man who washed his eyes or anointed his eyes with mud. And they want to know, where is he? I don't know. I don't know where he is. Which, cool. He doesn't. Like you said, I don't know what he looks like.
Logic.
Don't know. There's no gotchas here. This is not like this is just plain.
Common sense.
This is
That's
just going
right.
going through
This
the
is a simple part.
going through the text. Yeah, I'm not trying to trip anybody up. So yeah, very very simply, like, okay, so go there. Next people out, neighbors. All right, Act 3. Pharisees getting into the action.
Oh, yeah.
So they brought to the Pharisees a man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day. When Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes, big no-no. So the Pharisees again asked him how he received his sight. And he said to them, he put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. This poor guy is like, he's already said it. Okay, this is what happened. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. Others said, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs? Okay, so
The logical question.
the Pharisees say that Jesus is a sinner, okay, not of God. Okay. So they again said to the blind man, what do you say about him since he has opened your eyes? And he said, he's a prophet. So now the man says Jesus is a prophet. Okay. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight. So, none of this is checking out because this Jesus guy, he healed on the Sabbath, and that's a big no-no. And so he must be a sinner to do such a thing, okay, to do such signs. So this can't be. So he must not have been blind. This is a big hoax. So until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he see? I love this. His parents answered, we know that this is our son, and he was born blind. But how he sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He's of age. He'll speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be the Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, he is of age, ask him. So the parents punt it back to the son.
Or threw him under the bus.
Well, I don't think they completely threw him under the bus, but they're definitely like, we're not getting involved. We don't know. Ask him. Some dude did it. And so, it shows that they know that there's something going on. I mean, how'd that happen? Huh. Well, I'm sorry, everybody online who is now seeing a picture of just my midsection there.
It's magnified.
That's unfortunate. I didn't change anything. Oh, that's.
It's me. I have a Mimo.
Oh, you're doing
I
it.
could,
Oh, I'm gonna have to lock you out of that. You're messing with my video
but,
here.
I get an echo of feedback on words.
This is why we lock everything down there, because somebody might hop onto our system
Can
and.
you hear a feedback?
No.
Okay, it's just me and my hearing aids then. Anybody else hear any talking? Keep talking.
No,
guys.
okay. All right. So they know that there's something going on because he connects their fear of saying anything, or their fear of the Jews, because what's going on is he mentions this Jesus guy, and people have said Jesus might be the Christ, and then this is a big thing, so they don't want to get involved in any of this. But they definitely they acknowledge he was born blind, but they're not going to go on the record with anything else. They just deal with him.
Besides that, they weren't there.
Oh, now you turned off the.
That's what I was thinking. I'm gonna take it off.
Okay.
This is not working.
Yeah, you killed the video feed.
Sorry. Good intentions gone astray. Trying to get out of this now.
Oh, well, we lost. Well, we've got audio, so maybe people online will still have audio. Oh well. All right. So we got a lot going on there, and the parents are like, they're out of it, and we'll put them as part of Act 3 as well. All right. So for the second time, so this is Act 4, Pharisees, Part 2. Okay. So for the second time, they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." And he answered, "Whether he's a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." So, I mean, very, he's not trying to ascribe any, hey, you guys are the religious experts. You're saying he's a sinner. Okay, whatever. All I know is he healed me. What he did made me see. They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He's already told them, right? So they're trying to dig deeper. They're like, "Oh, well, let's get to the bottom of this." Kind of like, let's get to the bottom of who sinned. Now they're like, well, let's get to the bottom of how Jesus is doing these things, because it can't be from God. So they're like, tell us how he did this. Possibly from some magic, or who knows where they're going with that. He answered them, "I've already told you, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again?" See, I feel this guy, because he's very earnest, and he's dealing with a situation where now he's blind, he's excited, and then he says, "Do you also want to become his disciples?" Which you gotta think, he had to know how that was gonna go over. I mean, I say things to Heather all the time, where I'm like, I know this is gonna get me in trouble, but it's gonna be fun. It's like, I know I shouldn't say this, but I can't resist. And I say it, and I get the look, and I'm like, totally worth it. And then the fallout, and I'm like, that wasn't worth it at all. But I mean, I totally get this guy, because that is so a move that I think we all know, where it's like, you've been getting needle, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna poke after that. Like, oh, you want to become his disciples too? So that, I mean, I figure at that point he knows that, okay, you've asked me once, everyone's asking me, no one's listening to me, so are you gonna listen to this? So I love the spunk. Gotta love this guy. And they reviled him, did not go over well, saying, "You are his disciple," which, I mean, they're making a jump here. I mean, at no point has he said anything. He just says, he's made me see. But they say, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we don't know where he comes from." The man answered, "Why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they cast him out. All right.
They're
So,
stubborn.
what's that?
They're stubborn.
They are, everybody's stubborn.
All the way through.
Yes,
the
they are stubborn. They're really trying to sort all this out, and they're not putting all the pieces together, and they're like, well, it can't be this, because he did this on the Sabbath, so he's a sinner, and clearly sinners can't do these kind of things, and he's actually approaches it from the other direction. They say he did this, he broke the Sabbath, therefore he is a sinner, therefore he couldn't do these things, therefore something's wrong. The man born blind obviously has come from the other direction, saying like, look, he did this thing. Let's start there. He did this thing that you could not do except with God. Only God could do this. Therefore, whatever you say about him, this man is from God. Okay? this is what I know. I mean, he's not really making any kind of grand confession of this is the Christ, this is the Savior. He's just like, okay, he's coming from his perspective and saying, look, let's work this way. He's
Well,
from God.
Well, he's still insistent that he is a prophet.
Right.
That's what a prophet would do.
Yeah.
So is this kind of like the confessional and missional extremes?
Oh God, we don't want to do that. I don't know. We might be able to. I wouldn't go there. Not today. We go from. So he's gone from a man to a prophet. Now, definitely from God, which is not necessarily a distinction from this, but just we'll just say rhetorically is a little bit of a move. That he is from God. I mean, prophets were from God, but it's just like he's continuing down this line. Then Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, which is awesome, just in that, Jesus hears about the plight of this man, so what does he do? He seeks him out. Jesus is always seeking his people. So he finds him and says, do you believe in the Son of Man? So, basic doctrinal, do you believe in this? He answered, and who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? All right, so tell me, Jesus. Okay, fill me in. Jesus said to him, you have seen him. Of course, who is he? First, who does he see? Jesus. But for a man born blind, you've seen him, which is comical in its own sense. It's like he's only been seen for not even a day at this point. But you've seen him, okay? And it is he who is speaking to you, which, again, this is a wonderful, clear place where Jesus points to himself and says, I am the Son of Man. I am I am the Messiah. I am the Savior. I am. Says this all over the place. He said, Lord, I believe, and he worshiped him. So, I mean, right away, he's like, boom, disciple, believe, faith, awesome. Jesus said, for judgment I came into this world, that those who do not may see, and those who see may become blind. Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, are we also blind?
Nope.
Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no guilt, but now that you say we see, your guilt remains. So we see this this fun, coming towards the end here, we see this fun little transposition or flipping around, whatever you want to call it, where, the man born blind, he was blind, he couldn't see, but Jesus allowed him to see, made him see, healed him so that he could see, and which leads him ultimately to say, Lord, I believe, and he worships Jesus. Jesus restores, and this is the thing, he restores his sight physically, yes, of course, but he restores spiritual sight, or gives him spiritual sight, right? He not only gives him physical sight, but spiritual sight. So now he sees. Whereas the Pharisees
Are still
who
blind.
saw clearly, well, we know what we see, and he's working on the Sabbath and blah, 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 and all this stuff, they do not see.
But is Christ saying, you see, you know who I am, and you're denying me?
They should. Yeah, I mean, they should know who he is, right? He's saying, like you search the scriptures, and I am the fulfillment of these scriptures. He's if you search them, if you know them, you Pharisees, and you should, you should see them pointing to me, but you don't. And this is going to be drawing a really the fact that he uses somebody born blind is that this guy didn't have any choice in the matter. He was born blind. It's not like he did, he was fooling around with a knife when he was little, or did something stupid. No, he was born blind. Throughout you go to the prophets, and they'll often refer to the blindness of the people. Going back to that time and what the prophets were seeing, the spiritual blindness of the people of Israel back in those days, it was all a chosen blindness. We've been going through it in the morning prayer with, starting from Sinai into the wilderness, how it's like at the beginning, things were seemingly pretty, well, it's like things were great, then there was a golden calf, and that was good. But once he starts laying down the law and this is how we want it, this is how I want everything done, this is how I want everything built, and everything, there's a little refrain that we've had the last couple weeks where, and everything the Lord said, the people of Israel did, exactly as he said. This is how you're building the tabernacle. That's how we're going to build it. This is the offerings and everything. That's what we bring. And then Numbers, whatever we were in, chapter 11.
I'm getting tired of this stuff we're eating.
Yeah, 3 days out, and they're like,
Well.
yeah, and so there's a shift that happens fairly quickly about just and again, it's like they've been out of Egypt for a while. It's not like this was over a weekend. So you can imagine there was a lot of weariness going on, and like, hey, if it took you a while to get anywhere, over a year, you'd probably be like, hey, are we there yet? But as they go, God has shown them who He is. He's pillar of cloud. He's been there. He's actually been before them. He's shown them. He's delivered manna from heaven. He's fed them miraculously. He's shown them exactly, and they've had opportunities to see Him plainly. And yet, over the course of time, they still turn against. They still rebel. There's still exile that comes first to the kingdom of Israel, then to the kingdom of Judah. That's what a chosen blindness. And this is what He's dealing with the Pharisees. Are we blind? Of course. No, we see. It's like, if you were blind, you'd have no guilt. But you say, we see, your guilt remains. Because they're saying, we see. And what do they see? Jesus is a sinner. He is not of God. They're seeing what they want to see. In a similar way, to a lesser degree, I suppose, the disciples, when they see the man born blind, they see what they want to see. Who sinned? Let's get, Jesus is the only one here who just deals with, he sees a man born blind, afflicted, and He heals him, gives him sight. More than that, gives him faith, brings him to faith. So awesome stuff. And this is why I go back to the mud, and I just like the image of him, like, everybody's blind in this passage at some point, right? The Pharisees have been blind the whole time. The disciples they're squinting. they can see, but it's like, okay. The parents, they see, but they're like, oh, we don't want to. Yeah, that's our boy. Okay, they're looking everywhere else. The one who is really and truly blind, Jesus is like, okay, well, I'm going to make you, mud in your eyes. We're going to make it so that there's just make you even more blind. But through this, I'm going to show you who I am. And even He has this neat progression of, well, first He's the man who anointed my eyes with mud. Then He refers to Him as the prophet. Then he emphasizes that by saying, well, He's definitely from God. And then He comes to the confession that, oh, you are the Son of Man, based on what Jesus has told him. Lord, I believe. You've seen Him, and it is He who's speaking to you. Amen. And He says, okay, finally, Son of Man.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about this a little bit in this class, but the Hebrew understanding of that phrase, Son of Man, what is the Hebrew cultural understanding of that here in the New Testament? What does it mean?
New Testament?
Yeah. What does Son of Man mean?
Messiah. I mean, it's the one who is coming.
The one
Well, I mean, it is. You go back to what, Ezekiel?
I was saying it was Daniel.
Daniel.
But I saw one on the clouds like a son of man.
Right. Now, I mean, it's not like this was a completely unknown term or phrase for them. But in the kind of the time between the prophets and Jesus, I mean, there had been some development in that. And so there is some kind of eschatological significance to the guy. Yeah. Eschatological, sometimes, sorry.
When it says, and they cast Him out, and then Jesus heard that they had cast Him out.
Yep.
What does cast Him out actually mean? Was He banned from the temple or something like that? Just cast Him out? Just said,
yeah,
okay,
I mean,
get out of here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I couldn't say if it was like, if you got the permanent ban or if it was just, get out of here, like, we're done with you. Likely we're done with you because.
But then Jesus heard that they had done that, and then He sought Him out. He looked for Him. I thought that was nice.
he's keeping tabs, which, depending on what you're doing, could be good or bad. Jesus keeping tabs on you. But no, yeah, it's a good thing. So yeah,
The reference on that is Daniel 7:13.
there we go.
I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man, and he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him.
Okay.
There's not one meaning for son of man, because it is throughout other parts of the text
Right, right.
besides Daniel.
No, I
It
know.
can be
Right.
like an angelic being, it can just be a person, it can be messianic, it
Right.
depends on the context.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just one, but usually, like, except in like Daniel, it's usually like just
Right, right.
an angelic type.
Yeah. It was something having to do with bringing to fulfillment. You know, there was this kind of just son of man,
But
which is
then
why.
Ezekiel, God calls Ezekiel son of man.
Right. And there was.
So it's just a person too, so it's all sorts of kinds of things.
Especially when he does refer to that, he is son of man, just who he is.
Right.
In that time, there is a development of that does get a little bit more leans.
But it's always a connection with God.
Oh yeah, yeah. It does lean more by Jesus' time. There is more of a attachment to it in this messianic sort of
Right. That's why it's
figure.
capitalized.
Right. But yeah, it starts where there's some ambiguity and there's some play with it. But by the time we get to the Gospels, anytime you see Son of Man, it generally has that messianic thrust to it, even if it's not explicitly spelled out in Daniel. Oh yeah, that's fast. Well, kind of fast. Anyway, any other comments, thoughts? Oh yeah, that's.
One other connection is this is kind of a perfect illustration to Jesus talking to Nicodemus, and you get through John 3:16 through 20.
Yep.
I came into the world not to condemn the world, the very beginning, that's it, and then going through everything else, talking about how you see and if you believe.
Right.
This is kind of like the illustrated play of that description he gave to Nicodemus.
Well, and even going from that is, in John 3:17 is, I did not come into the world to condemn the world. And so what happens right afterwards, what do they go with?
Condemnation.
Yeah, they're looking at condemnation. Who sinned? Who's wrong here? And Jesus' response is, oh no, let me make this right. Let me heal this. Let me fix this. And then even the for judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Even in you say, oh well, he didn't come in to condemn the world, he comes in judgment. What's going on there? Well, I mean, by him coming, it is by him being here. I mean, just automatically brings judgment because he is holy, he is good, he calls us to himself. Kind of I have a little thing in my sermon today, because we're doing the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well. And the great thing about that is, so spoiler alert for the sermon, comes at the end, it's like my ooh, big moment, right? He doesn't judge her. She's caught, she's adulterous, she's in a situation she shouldn't be in. She's been through it, she's been afflicted. He doesn't come in and beat her down. He doesn't judge her at all in the context of what he says. I mean, he says, he lays it out, he says, this is what it is. He just announces the reality, the truth. She says, oh, I don't have a husband. He's like, yeah, I know. You've had 5. And the one you're with is not your husband. He doesn't say, now, because she's already condemned. She's already judged. I mean, the fact that she's there at noon is she's already been judged by her peers, by her community, even to a degree herself. Judged herself because she's isolated herself, even if the community hasn't helped out in that matter. But just by virtue of Jesus being there, brings a judgment. But he comes to free us from this condemnation, to bring, freedom from sin, blindness, spiritual blindness, all that good stuff. Any other comments, thoughts, questions?
looking in.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, gosh. The time change is brutal. We'll get through it. We're all going to crash today. It'll be great. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, then we might wrap up early for a change. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, there we go. Thank you. And thank you online for anybody who stayed.
Stay.